In the last 2 years, I have given up about 80% of my friends. And during that process, I have become happier and more content with my social life than I ever thought was possible. Alright, let me back up a little bit here. I have always been a very social person. When I was in my 20s as a student, I valued nothing more than surrounding myself with as many fun and interesting people as possible. I was partying a lot, I went out all of the time. Of course, one purpose was to meet girls, but another one was honestly just to form connections with as many new people as possible. For me during that time, happiness was almost purely generated through my social life. And actually that has not changed. But what has changed is how I structure my social life. Nowadays, I apply the Pareto Principle to my social circle. The Pareto Principle, also called the 80-20 rule, states that 80% of your desired outcome comes from 20% of the cause. And that applies in a bunch of different fields. For example, companies know that roughly 80% of their revenue oftentimes comes from 20% of their clients, or that 80% of your output comes from 20% of your daily work. But I figured you can also apply this 80-20 rule to your everyday life. And especially with my social life, I started noticing more and more that oftentimes I would put a lot of work, a lot of effort into it, and yet it would not bring me a lot of joy in return. I would, for example, structure my weekends in a way that I could meet as many people as possible while not being fully present and fully invested in any of those friendships. At the same time, I would try to keep contact with people all around the globe through social media, oftentimes having Facebook conversations with 10 to 20 people simultaneously. And to be fair, I did that because I really cared about those people. They were all amazing friends that I met during my 20s when I lived in several different countries abroad. So I really tried my best to foster our relationships even after we separated and didn't live in the same geographical area anymore. But after a while, I had to admit to myself that it was simply not enough to write a Facebook message every once in a while, and it was impossible for me to keep up with all the different lives of my friends. My social life had turned from something that was fun and an incredible source of happiness to myself into something that felt like work. So I started applying the Pareto Principle and cutting down on my social life dramatically. The first thing that I did was stop posting on Facebook. I noticed that it didn't make much sense to try to keep my more than 1,000 Facebook friends updated on my daily life. Nobody cares which party or club you went to or what smoothie you drank the other day unless they were there with you. Next, and for the same reason, I started unfollowing most of my Facebook friends. Even if you're a really good friend, if you live on a different continent than I do, I really don't need to know what you had for dinner last night. Step 3 in the downsizing process of my social circle was to massively reduce the amount of people I text with. Again, I noticed that I'm sharing and also receiving a lot of information from people that I haven't met in maybe years, so how important can that really be? It turned out not very much. Of course, there are friends that I text with regularly and that I would share long messages with, but for the most part I noticed that chatting with other people was mostly a way of just keeping myself entertained and spending my time. And the fourth step of applying the Pareto Principle to my social life was to generally just meet a lot less people. I wanted to overcome this social stress of meeting as many people as possible. I wanted to get rid of my fear of missing out and instead be able to really be present and fully immersed when I'm meeting one of my very good and dear friends. So what actually has changed for me since then? Well, if I had to summarize it in one sentence, I would say that my social life nowadays is a lot less about quantity and a lot more about quality. Applying the Pareto Principle allowed me to identify the friendships that really bring a lot of value to me in form of just making me happy, bringing joy into my life, and making me feel good. So I in turn started investing a lot more time and effort into those kind of friendships. My group of friends that I'm in contact with has definitely shrunk, but those people are the ones that I'm constantly chatting with, that I'm meeting for coffee, that I'm going on vacation with, that I'm having long Skype calls with, and I can say that I've never felt better about those friendships. It has allowed me to reach a level of depth in those relationships that I honestly had no idea was possible. Maybe it's a little bit comparable with hooking up with a lot of partners versus having one steady, stable relationship with one partner. And while both have its pros and cons, I feel like one is a lot more sustainable in the long run. Now I hope that after watching this video you don't go out and end most of your friendships. I simply want you to become a little bit more aware of how you invest your time into your social life and where you get the most back. Maybe you then realize that it might make sense to allocate more time to the friendships that also give you the most positive feedback. Either way, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please make sure that you subscribe down below for more videos about how to live a happier life. Thanks for watching and talk to you next time.